George, AI native bank or AI native fintech, is it a distant reality?
I'll say those who adapt survive.
Okay. And what about agentic? Is it a matter of adapt or die?
Or invest.
Or invest? That's a good one. You were at GTC, obviously, this year. Which industry showed up the loudest, had the biggest presence?
Of course, financial services. And for those who don't know, GTC is the NVIDIA's developer conference that happens once a year in the US, and we bring it into Europe. So October in Berlin. So I hope to see more of you.
Wow. Oh, in Berlin.
In Berlin,
Now,
yeah.
we in financial services are celebrating this moment where Revolut has published its foundational model, PRAGMA. Is it a game changer for the industry or only just for a few players?
It's a game changer because the insights are, for me, the mode for the future, where companies will win or will lose.
And what about tier one banks? Is their future, their near-term future, really off-the-shelf foundational models? Yes or no?
Depends. This is a strategic decision that each banks need to make.
Okay. And what about a financial world model for finance? Is that a fantasy or do you think that's the vision?
I'm sure that people that are building such models, so if you're building a model like this, call me.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I am your host, Pylarinou, and today I'm sitting down with Georgios Kolovos, who is NVIDIA's EMEA payments and fintech leader. Georgios, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Effie, thank you for having me. So lovely.
You're one of the clearest voices. You work with the industry players that are actually building, as the tokenized world says. There's a lot of building going on behind the scenes, and I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to talk about that. Let's start with what happened at GTC this year, because there were, I would say, more than half a dozen important fintech and with a broad sense, players there. Give us a sense of the atmosphere and what it really means for this vision of an AI factory for our industry.
Yeah, for those who haven't been there, definitely need to experience it. So GTC takes over the entire San Jose. So the entire city is painted green, the NVIDIA colors. And this year was over 35,000 people that joined the event, including everyone and all the key and AI companies. Financial services typically has a very strong presence, but this year was particularly strong as it was the largest industry represented in the event. And we had a very clear idea of where it's going. Financial services for NVIDIA, typically we looked into a number of different three segments. The one that I spend most of my time is in payments and fintech. And in payments and fintechs, we noticed there was a few very interesting signals. One is this notion of converting data into insights. And the other is the agentic revolutions, how these insights then are used by agents. So at the event, as you rightly said, we had a very strong presentation from Revolut and Adyen from Europe. We have Stripe and PayPal coming also to talk about each of these areas. And all of that comes into the, as you say, the AI factory framework. For the people that are not familiar, AI factory is how do you look holistically? How do you go beyond just the application layer? How do you set your infrastructure, your business to be able to benefit from the broader shift towards AI and the enablement of these AI capabilities, looking at the application, looking after all the models, and this can be the LLMs, but also can be these foundation models that we will talk, I'm sure, around the transaction foundation models, but also how are you thinking about the infrastructure? How do you think about the GPUs that you need, and how do you build this full stack? Jensen talked about 5-layer cakes. So these are the 5-layer cakes. The companies that will be the winners in this AI world with the companies that invest across the entire stack.
Interesting. The names that you shared are familiar names, and we know that they are really leading beyond the incumbents that are also investing heavily. But let's take a step back because I want to get your perspective. When we say we want to become an AI native player, be it an AI native bank, an AI native fintech, paytech, and others use terms like an agentic bank. There's already books out there, the Agentic Bank. And there isn't any consensus. I think different people understand or think different things when they hear this. I wanted to hear your perspective. What do you think is an AI native financial services player or an agentic? Do you make that distinction? What's in your mind?
For me, the bigger distinction is, how do you use this technology? Are you going to buy things off the shelves, or are you going to build things yourself that gives you the competitive edge? So the two options are quite viable. And this is a strategic decision that each organization need to make. Is this a agentic first? Is it the AI native? For me, all companies, it's one form or the other. And we did an interesting survey around financial services institution around the adoption and evolution of how companies are investing and where they are looking into AI. The numbers were pretty telling. Pretty much every single organization is looking to invest more this year than in the previous year. So what label you put on top of that is, I don't want to say irrelevant, but it is, what do you do underneath? How do you prepare your platform to what you discuss about the AI factory, but also what are the type of talents that you bring into the organization, but also how do you upscale your existing talents? How do you augment work with AI tools and agents that help the businesses to be more productive? And we've seen this evolution coming from, it initially was a lot of, hey, this will bring a lot of efficiency. This will help us to manage costs, to manage operation more efficiency. There was a big foray of different use cases experimentation. There was few famous reports there, quite a lot of pilots POC came to fruition. Now we are moving to the phase, and the more and more I talk with the board is around, how do you embrace it? How do you actually start thinking about changing your business models? What does new capability come to provide you? Are they created if you are PSP, how do you create new value-added services to deepen your relationship with merchants? If you are in a kind of more in a issuing on a fintech side, how do you add more value to your consumers with these capabilities? And again, for me, the labors, yes, there's interesting way people are positioning themselves, but ultimately is what you do underneath.
Interesting. We've clearly seen some of the most common use cases, be it in fraud, be it at the call centers, be it at customer service, be it in the marketing area. I think those are the more common use cases that have been, but
fraud, pretty much every engagement that we have starts from fraud. And fraud has been an area that machine learning has been used for a long time. And the latest deep learning techniques are always starting from there. The evolution that we are seeing is, yes, in fraud, there's a lot, and our platform can accelerate a lot of this. So NVIDIA is not only a GPU company, but also have a lot of software library that accelerate a lot of the workload. So when you apply this for fraud, you can see the faster you process the data, the faster you train the models, the better model you use, better protection you provide to the company. So immediately this is very clearly you can articulate the ROI from these initiatives. Where it becomes quite interesting is, how do you take it to the next level? How do you share all this goodness that comes from, and the experience, the models, the insight that you generate from the fraud side? How do you spread it across the organization? And this is some of the work that Revolut, and I forgot to mention when I mentioned all the companies in GTC, Mastercard was also there. They made a very interesting announcement, the same. So it's not only for fintechs, it's also for companies with quite established infrastructure, with quite
would call incumbents in a way, and not natively born hyperscalers like Revolut or Nubank and so on. Having said that, we see this emergence of these transaction foundational models that are trying to be more unified and multi-purpose models. And we'll talk afterwards about PRAGMA and some others. But share your thoughts around this tug of war between specialized models and these more multi-purpose models. Do you see a world where we'll have both, some companies really using these multi-purpose, developing them and using the multi-purpose ones, or will most of the industry be with these specialized models and somehow have a federated network of agents that are managing these? Where do we stand?
So yes, these transaction foundation models, the essence of these models, they're predictive models that work on predict what is the next transaction, so what is the next action based on the prior historic interactions that the customer has with this particular financial services institution. So obviously, to build these types of models, you need to have a critical mass first of customers, and also you need to have a relationship with these customers over time. So it provides you a number of different touch points which will enable you to make a prediction based on the prior behavior. If you don't have that, if it's your business is a one-off engagement with a customer, there are other techniques that are much more relevant for you to build. And for example, graph neural networks are very good that you don't compare and try to predict based on your prior engagement with the customer. You're trying to predict the behavior of the customer based on how you compare this customer or transaction with other customer transactions with similar patterns, right? So this tabular foundation, transaction foundation models are not for every use case. And on the PRAGMA paper, you see the Revolut team specifically called out AML as an area that these models are not necessarily performing better, that are more a different methodology. Just to clarify, these models provide the context. These models will be able to help you to understand what potential next transactions will be with a customer. But these embeddings that hold this information are then used to infuse all the other models that today exist. This will be maybe your fraud model or maybe your cross-sell model. So it is not one universal model. It's the embeddings that power a lot of the models. There are two main things that are quite interesting for these models, and this is why we see a surge in company adoption. This first will allow you to break silos. And anyone that works in financial services knows how many silos are there in any organization. The defense size, the risk compliance, very rarely interact and talk and share data and insights with your growth sides. So doing these transaction foundation models enable these two sides of the organization, and there's tons in between, to interact and provide a common context and operate from the common baseline of the interaction of the customer. And then the other important thing is that this is a self-supervised model. So traditional models, you train the models, you test it, and you deploy it, right? These models continue building and evolving as more transaction are coming. As I said, they're not easy. This is not happen just out of the blue. This transformation is built over, let's call it 30 years of evolution of using machine learning and deep learning in financial services, but even beyond with the evolution of the transformer infrastructure, etc. What we are seeing, there was a signal when last year Stripe, Nubank, Adyen all were talking about this, and now you're seeing the next wave of this. Companies are building on top of the research. And this is quite interesting. A lot of the research is public, right? And each step is bringing us to a little bit closer to a better model, to finding a new insights. Where do we need to research more? Where do we need to invest more?
Georgios, NVIDIA, I saw, has published research on these transaction foundational models, right? And then there's Revolut that also published its own research paper, not obviously with the weights and everything, but it's a blueprint. I think Nubank did that, but with a lag, and maybe we'll see more of that. What I'm hearing from you is that these transaction foundational models are not replacing or disabling other specialized, if you want, models or existing ones. They're actually connecting to them and enriching intelligence or the context. Is that correct?
Correct. This is the intelligent layer, as you want to say. So we are talking before about data layer. So these new models are converting this data into insights. You can call it connected insights because comes from a number of different sources, but also the more you use it in more use cases, the richer it becomes. And the opportunities are endless, right? So everything that has happened so far is very much into the remit of the existing organization. You can imagine how these embeddings can become also a potential new revenue streams for companies, how these embeddings can be used to connect to third-party propositions. Let's say you want to deploy a voice AI customer service. You can use some of the embeddings to provide the context of the customer. So there's a lot of opportunity, and there's definitely a lot more research and a lot of more experimentation that need to do that. But the signal is very clear. These silos that exist today in financial services doesn't help the companies to be competitive and provide better services, being to merchants or to consumers. So these transaction foundation models are stepped into the direction to unify the insights, provide the context, and become much more personalized in the interaction with the customers.
So do you see this trend becoming an industry standard? You mentioned before that it's not for everybody. It's in areas where you have large volume and frequent. So do you see that big tier one incumbents, just to throw some names, JP Morgan, Bank of America, BNY Mellon, those type of size of players will go in that direction, and maybe they are, and it's not just public? Do you think that's the industry trend?
A lot of the banks are already investing in intelligence in one way or the other.
Yeah.
And some banks are quite ahead of the curve. So it's not only that this is happening in isolation in the financial services, in the fintech space, also a lot of banks are investing and has been investing for time. What was interesting, actually, one of the most, I don't know if it's the most, but one thing that I'm quite happy with the work that Revolut did, that it's not only about, when you talk about, when you refer to transaction foundation models, you think about transactions as the only source of insights. What Revolut has done quite smartly is adding events data. And events can be anything, right? So your interaction with the app, the receiving of a marketing communication, your application, your customer calls. Then these data sets become much more richer and provide you a better context, because transactions, yes, they're good, but it don't give you a lot more. So the behavior comes from these events. So if you think of transaction foundation models being built not only on transaction data, but also you'll be able to augment them with other events, then becomes not a question of how big is the organization, but how many touch points the organization has with their customers.
Yes, that's why we're talking about an event sequence-based model for Revolut, which is probably not the case for other models. For example, Mastercard's very evolved fraud model, I don't think is based on
Revolut is quite interesting. It's a very different context, right? Mastercard is a network, is a customer B2C proposition that has quite a strong suite of products and subscriptions, so have a lot different touch points with the customer. The context is very different. And this is where these foundation models, you need to find what's the purpose. If any organization is thinking to building it, what is the purpose? Why are you building? Are you building it to deepen and make your relationship with the customers better? Are you building them to actually help merchants become better? Merchant acquiry is another one, and Adyen has been doing some amazing work on their models and the foundations of the insights. And merchants acquiring is also an interesting space to explore. And you can take it even further. You can see what Shopify is doing, for example, which uses similar technology that connects actually from one side, you look how to help consumers to find what they're searching, but then on the other side, you help merchants to figure out what are the customers that are coming at a good or bad customer. So the application, the concept, and the methodology that is used is quite interesting. You've seen Plaid also made an announcement recently about the use, and they're using it very much to help them to classify transaction and engagements in a better way. So you see a lot more experimentation. You can see these foundation models move to different domains. Maybe there's foundation models, transaction foundation models in the B2B space that will come. Maybe there's other financial services domain that will leverage the same methodology, which is, if you have sequential, if you have a time engagements with the customers, which provides you a lot of insight. How do you convert that to provide you the context of which your other models and your overall interaction with the customer operate?
You're talking about what British people call Plaid and others may call Plaid. Right?
Sorry,
It's
I live in
okay.
London,
This is
so
a classic. What's the right pronunciation? Is it the British one or the American? If you
we
will.
can record again. I can call
No,
it.
it depends who you're talking to for this. Which brings me to a question that is important to address. Obviously, legacy financial services providers, even those that have gone through let's say, successful digital transformation over the past 2 decades, they still have legacy, they have silos, they have fragmentations, despite any digital transformation. However, what about digital natives, the Revoluts of the world, the ones that were born 10, 15 years ago, cloud native, modular, and so on? What difficulties or challenges are they facing in their AI transformation journeys? What are you seeing?
I would not say it's only unique to this digital native or cloud native fintech businesses. The world is quite complex at the moment. You have so many different technology that are emerging, AI being one of them. You have everything happening on stable coins and sovereign rails and complexity of operating. So I think that one of the bigger challenges is how do you make these strategic decisions? How do you decide where to invest? An investment, I don't mean only investing in the infrastructure, in the GPUs. It's also investment in talent, investment in education, your existing staff, because any decision that you make around those technology means that you need to shelve something else. So I think this is the bigger challenge. And you add into that all the uncertainty politically, there's tons of legislation changes that happens. It's very difficult to make the decisions. My view is that you need to make a decisions, otherwise the decision will be made for you. So the company that we were discussing, they have a very clear directions where they want to go and very clear goalposts around what are the steps to get there. The company that is a little bit trying to, we want to go there, but we will test a little bit, we will not put 400%. This is normally the companies either that not moving fast or they're just completely losing their path. And there's different strategies, right? So you want to be leading the charge, you want to be seen as innovator, you want to invest, or you may take a different approach. You may say, I want to be a fast follower. So I would not bet very heavily on everything that is hot. And in the financial service, in the tech industry, there's always the next hot technology that is around the corner. You may wait and figure out. So for me, it's not the distinction between the established players and fintechs. It's more about the clarity and the vision. And beyond that is also the execution, right? It's good to have the vision, but are you actually investing along the way to make this happen?
Yeah, indeed. Georgios Jensen Juan talks a lot about world models, especially in physical AI, robotics, and so on. Should we start thinking about a financial world model? Is that something like a vision that should exist, that eventually we will get one of those financial world models?
There's so many things that I would love to do. This is one of them. Financial services is very unique. Even if you put the umbrella financial services, what do you mean by financial services? Is that the capital market? Is it the payments infrastructure? Is it B2C, B2B? So I think there's plenty of complexity, plenty of challenges to overcome. I'd love to be able to do even a digital twin of the entire payment ecosystem in a particular country. Imagine how rich this data can be and how powerful this can be to predict not only if something goes wrong, so what will happen, so you simulate different scenarios, but you can predict movements of people. You can enable it to accelerate innovation in a particular market. I think it's a complex way, but if you can scope it in the right format, I believe there's an opportunity to do something interesting.
Yeah, I've always dreamt on board of Star Trek with a dashboard that you really see all the money flows and can Really.
Do you need a dashboard nowadays? This is one of the things that is fascinating for me. It's your bank app applications, right? So mobile app, still everything is very static. Everything is dashboards related, where there's a very few banks that completely has embraced this chat-based interface with agents, not only for customer service, but also for anything else that you do with the bank. So your starter analogy for me is this static, you need to look at the dashboards, you need to make a decision, where there's another word that someone can help you. You can have a beautiful window, look out in the space, and someone tell you what you need to pay attention of.
What you need to pay attention. Actually, what you say, I only know of one bank in Malaysia that has actually launched this. It's not only conversational for customer support, it's like for everything you want to do, and maybe we will see more of that. The question for me, of course, is how much intelligence is behind it, because that matters more than the customer experience.
And it's also for the customer adoption. You think about how long did it take to customer to accept contactless payments. You see a wave of evolution of that. But when you see the little button typically in the bottom right corner of every banking app saying about you kind of customer service chatbot, I think this will evolve and soon will overtake the entire screen. Soon is it 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, but I think this is the direction of travel.
Yeah, 100%. Georgios, thank you so much for sharing your insights, and let's talk after GTC Europe.
I hope to see you there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.